Welcome to Lesson 3. In this lesson, we will learn various selection techniques. Selections are areas of an image that you choose to isolate from the rest of the image so you can make modifications to it. If you want to follow along, I am working with a couple of files. One is called selections.psd and one is called dash.jpg. These can be found in the Chapter 3 folder of your project files on your desktop. Alright, well, let's make some selections. Let's talk about the selection tools you'll find over in the Tools panel. There are 3 different tool groups of selection tools. The first one here on the top, if you press and hold down your mouse, you'll notice that we have a rectangular marquee, an elliptical marquee tool, and 2 other selection tools that deal with single columns. You'll also notice that we have a lasso tool, a polygon lasso tool, and a magnetic lasso tool. And then right here we have the magic wand tool. The magic wand tool has been around forever and is a great friend to Photoshop. The magic wand tool makes selections based on color range. Hidden underneath the magic wand tool, you are going to see the quick selection tool, and we're definitely going to get to those a little bit later. For now, let's talk about making a selection with one of our basic selection tools. Let's go grab the rectangular marquee tool from here. Alright, well, the first thing we need to do before we make a selection, we need to select the layer into which we want to make the selection on, right? So let's look over in the Layers panel and notice that we have a flower and a cat and a layer. Why don't we go ahead and choose the flower layer? And now with your rectangular marquee selection tool still active, simply click and drag to create a selection. When you see these blinking lines, those are referred to as marching ants. If you needed to make any changes or modifications to your selection, what Photoshop is going to do is say whatever is inside of your marching ants, that's what you want to be modified. So if we started making color adjustments or blurring or running a filter, only what is inside of the marching ants on the flower layer will be modified. Okay, well, what if we wanted to get this selection on a layer by itself? Let's do that. Let's go up to the Layer menu and let's go down to New and let's select Layer via Copy. Notice the shortcut for this, Command J if you're on a Mac, Control J if you're on a PC. This is one shortcut that you'll definitely want to remember. Let's click that for now and then look over in the Layers panel and notice that we have a new Layer 2. What that means is Photoshop made a layer based on the selection that we had. Let's move it because it's right on top of the other image. Let's go grab the Move tool, click and drag down. And now you can see that your selection is on a layer all to itself, and now we've moved it out of the way. Alright, let's experiment with that again. This time, let's make a selection around part of the cat. Let's go down and experiment with the lasso tool. Now the lasso tool takes a little getting used to because it's basically kind of freeform, like a pencil and a paper. So again, our goal is to kind of just freeform part of the cat here, maybe his face, and get it on a layer to itself. But before we do, here's something that I want to call your attention to, and that's what you should always be mindful of, and that is where your cursor is in the Layers panel. You'll notice right now, because we were working on our new flower layer, that's what's actually selected. So if I were to try to make a selection of the cat, Photoshop probably won't know what I'm doing and I'll likely get an error message. So let's go down and select the white cat layer, and now we're free to use our lasso tool for our selection. And again, this is kind of just free form. So take your mouse, hold your mouse down, and make a really rough selection around the cat's face. You can kind of see that that takes a little getting used to, right? So let's do this. Before we put this selection on its own layer, what if we wanted to add to the selection or take away? This is where your modifier keys come in handy. With your lasso tool still selected, if you hold down your Option key on the Mac or your Alt key on the PC, you're going to notice that a little minus sign appears next to the lasso tool. This is handy because this will let you take away from the selection. If you have a piece that you didn't mean to select, maybe for me it would be right here, with the Option key held down, I'm just going to draw a little selection around the part that I want to get rid of. Now, all the while, I'm holding down my Option key and my mouse. I'll let go of the mouse first and the Option key second. Okay? that will take away part of your selection without Photoshop deselecting your original selection. Now, what if I wanted to add to my selection? Well, the same thing applies, but this time it's the Shift key. Now, if I wanted to go over to the right and add a little bit of the cat's face, I'll be sure not to click away from the lasso tool. I'll hold down the Shift key. Notice a little plus sign appears next to my lasso tool. That's great. Now I can click and drag a little bit around. See how I'm just going to drag a circle there and add on to the selection. Always hold down your modifier key to the very end. Let go of the Shift key last. All right, I'll do that one more time. The goal is to add a little bit more of his face here. So we know that we'll keep the lasso tool active. We'll hold down our Shift key. That lets Photoshop know that we have a selection that we want to add on to. All right, so inside this selection, I'm going to hold the mouse down. And mind you, I'm also holding the Shift. And I'll just add on the little piece that I want to add on to, right? Let go of the mouse and then let go of the Shift key. And now we have a selection, even though it's pretty rough. Well, let's do one other thing and then we'll move this selection to a layer of its own. Why don't we feather the edges before we make a copy of it? So let's do this. Let's go up to the Select menu. Let's go down to Modify. And from the bottom of this list, let's choose Feather. Feather is going to blur the edges around our selection by whatever radius we decide. So maybe let's go with 6 and let's click OK. And now it's time to get that selection on a layer by itself. You may recall that Command J is a great shortcut for that. And now let's see what happened. Let's look over in the Layers panel and we see that we have a new layer 3. Okay, very nice. Well, let's grab our Move tool and move our feathered selection out of the way so we can get an idea of what it looks like. And there you go. That's a nice feathered selection that we made with our lasso tool. One last thing. Do notice that we have two files open. We're working on selections.psd and we also have dash.jpg. Let's switch over to dash.jpg. Alright? Now this is a regular JPEG. It's not a Photoshop file. When you open a regular picture like a JPEG, you're going to get one locked background layer. It's a good idea if you need to make modifications to just double click the background layer and click OK, and now you have full editing capabilities if you need them. What we would like to do is we would like to get a portion of this picture out and put it over into selections. To do that, we can use one of our selection tools to identify which piece that we want to take out and move over to the other document. Before we do that, let's get our documents side by side so we can see both of them. Let's go to the Window menu here, go to Arrange, and let's tile these guys 2 up vertical. And now we'll actually see both of our images. Now again, we want to get part of this cute little dog, Dash. We want to make a selection here and put him over in our other document. So for this, let's maybe go up and grab the elliptical marquee tool. Now, before we use any tool, it's a good idea to check the settings, all right? Before, when we created a feathered selection, we did it after the selection was made. This time, if we wanted a feathered selection, we could go ahead and adjust the settings here. So maybe let's go with a 5 pixel feather, type 5 there, and click Enter. And now when we make our selection, the selection isn't exactly where you need it to be as you're holding down your mouse dragging. If you also hold your space bar down, you can reposition your selection and then keep dragging. This will allow you to get the selection exactly where you want it before you let go of the mouse. So just hold down the space bar, never let go of the mouse as you make your selection, and that'll make sure your selection is exactly where you need it to be, and then let go. Alright, so there's our marching ants, and now we need to get this selection from the file that it's in over into our selections.psd file. To do that, we are going to need to grab the Move tool, click on our selection, and simply drag it over to our selections.psd. And it did move over, and you'll also notice that it has a nice feathered edge. Let's close dash.jpg. We'll just click this X here. And we don't really need to save that, so we'll choose Don't Save. And Dash here, he's hidden behind our other images. Let's go to the Layers panel and drag layer 4, which is dash, to the top, and we'll reposition him anywhere that we'd like.